what new game hype does to your brain. Let's get into it.
In his book, Behave, The Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst, neurologist Robert Sapolsky references a study where monkeys have their brains scanned during a little game. The monkeys have been trained that when this light comes on, if they hit this button 10 times, they'll get a raisin. This was a study.
That is, again, another video highlighting the amazing brain function of a controller player. I cannot stress this enough. This is not only a common controller player, but even an outlier on either side of the skill curve controller player. Just want to say that.
Study on dopamine, a type of neurotransmitter that has quite a few functions but plays a large role in pleasure. Now, if you had to guess, when in this process do you think the monkeys had the biggest hit of dopamine?
Right before they did the thing.
Was it when they were pressing the button, when the light came on, right when they were getting the raisin, or maybe even shortly after they got that raisin? I guessed it would be when they actually received the raisin, when all their work paid off. Maybe you thought the same. But oddly, it was actually when the light came on, in that initial moment of anticipation, that the monkeys had the biggest spike of dopamine. You can see here that they did in fact feel some pleasure right after they had the raisin, but the initial promise of a reward was actually the most exciting part of this whole experience. I
just want to say, I am not immune to this either. I have in the past been like 100% been hyped for like a new game or whatever. And I get like super hyped up, and then it comes out and I play it and it's like, oh yeah, this is awesome. I'm having so much fun. But I can totally understand why this is a thing. Like, it's more exciting to be hyped up right before a game drops than it is to actually play the game.
Won't be using this lab monkey study to talk about gamers today. Do you know what I like to do every now and then? Sometimes I like to go back and watch specific trailers for games that I love. Games that have been out for a while now and I've probably beat more than once, but for some reason I find myself coming back to the trailers because I want to recapture that feeling of being excited for the game before it came out. The final Breath of the Wild trailer that they played at that big Nintendo Switch event with the sweeping orchestral movement and voice acting. The Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer from E3 2015, where you really didn't know what was happening until you heard those subtle notes and saw that sword. The first Three Houses trailer, Persona 5 Royals announcement, old Smash Bros. Character reveals, Guilty Gear's reveal at EVO, God of War, Elden Ring. I love reminiscing about that period just before a game's release, before the wall of content that will surely be made around it, when instead of a heavily explored book with worn pages, circles, arrows, and highlights at every turn, the game was just a glimmer in each of our eyes.
I would say probably the golden era for this time, for what he's describing, probably the 2010s was a great period for games because the trailers were hype as fuck. A lot of the new IPs were like just coming out with like their first installment of the franchise or whatever, and everybody was excited just to see like what's new instead of, oh, it's Assassin's Creed 15. Okay.
That stretch of time before a new game drops. And at the time of this video's release, there is only 1 week until the release of The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. We are in the shadow of one of the biggest game releases of the 20s, a time when historically I am overflowing with bliss at the promise of what is to come. But for some reason, this time around, my journey to the release of this game can only be described as somehow having my excitement in drive and reverse at the same time.
Damn, dude, your shit dirty as fuck. What is that? What? I don't know how many sodas have been spilt right here, my man, but there are enough.
Being a fan of this franchise has fucked up the
Ooh, baby.
transmission on my emotions, because you see, when it comes to the road to new game releases in the past few months, it has been bumpier than my face in middle school. The Callisto Protocol whiffed, but Dead Space was a grand slam.
Oh, yeah.
Forspoken laid an egg, but Crisis Core Reunion made fans proud. We got to see Kratos fight Thor, and Game Freak fight that release date. Some games completely flopped, some were subjects of controversy, some were treated to a new shiny coat of paint and critical acclaim. And since it has been such an unpredictable ride for the last little bit, if you're like me, waiting for Tears of the Kingdom probably has you feeling a bit on edge. If you're a part of any fan base, you typically follow this exact cycle.
Yeah.
A new title is announced, a cascade of emotions hits you, new information.
So being like an FPS enjoyer, I do kind of get excited when a new FPS game comes out or whatever, but like I can easily like judge it from like its gameplay, whether or not it's going to be like good or bad. Is there sprint? Is there aim down sight? Is there like, what's the movement like? What's the gunplay like? Is there going to be crossplay? How strong is the aim assist? So on and so forth. How much visual clutter is there? Etc. Etc.
And rumors come out. More emotions, often conflicting ones, swarm you like a cloud of bees. Reviews for that game drop, so do your expectations.
Yeah.
Or your faith in gaming journalism.
The more unknown a game is, like prior to release, the more hype it is. You know? It's like the more you know about the game, the less excited you are for it. Because the little snippets of gameplay that they do show you, you can automatically just tell like what kind of game it's going to be. And I think this is an issue for like people that like older gamers, you know, 30s, 40s plus, whatever. It's like, since you've played so many games, you're able to make that snap decision. Whereas a younger gamer, like maybe early teens or something like that, they don't have all of that shit in their head yet. So I would imagine it's like normal for them to be like hyped for a game. Like the more trailers they see.
The game is finally released. Your feelings stabilize. You either love it, hate it, or it's fine. The game is fine. But because that last stage of the cycle cannot be solidified until the game comes out, this whole bit here is one hell of a drug.
Yeah.
Several lights of varying levels of brightness, signaling an eventual reward. And as test monkeys, gamers, in many ways, I think the anticipatory stage, the hype train, can be one of the most exciting parts of a new game, perhaps in some cases even more memorable than the game itself.
And this is fine for people to be hyped for a game, you know? Like, even if you think the game is going to be like dog shit, but you're like kind of like halfway on the fence here or there, I think it's okay to be like hyped for a game, you know? It's like a lot of the older people that I watch or whatever, it's like they're like cautiously, they call it cautiously optimistic, you know? And that's like the nice way of saying it, because the wrong way of saying it is like you're going to be like a doomer gamer. It's like, oh, new game's coming out? What kind of fucking live service, free to play, pay to win, battle pass, dumbass shit is going to be in it or whatever, you know? That's like the norm. So like the halfway nice saying is like, you know, cautiously optimistic. And it's like all of this, like super hype crew 9000 or whatever, this is like an oddity to me, you know? But I still think this is cool.
Not just because there is science backing it up, but also because that steady stream of new information is kind of like a saga. Teasers, theories, frame-by-frame analysis, rumors, fake leaks, real leaks, gameplay, release date buzz. Amazon says it's coming out July 32nd. Do a pre-order? What if they're planning
July 32nd? I didn't, that almost passed me by. Oh my god.
a collector's edition? No. See, I don't want any more information. I'm already sold. I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
Oh my god, they bought Kenny G. My body's doing things. Anticipation is delicious.
Yeah.
That's why so many love stories are about the lead up to a romance beginning and not about the 20th year of marriage.
Yeah, because the moment these two kiss, The anime is over. You don't want to watch it. Okay, it happened. All right, next. All right. You're just not interested anymore.
It's why gambling makes your pulse do the Phil Collins drumbeat. It's why this screen activates something deep down inside of you. There's research to suggest that looking
Shiny
forward
colors.
to future positive events increases reward sensitivity, enhances memory of positive stimuli, induces positive affect, and relates to higher levels of well-being. One 2015 study even found that simply expecting positive events like a funny cartoon were a convenient and powerful way to induce positive emotion and help cope with stress. In many ways, watching something almost happen with the promise of it happening in the future is every bit as, if not more, enticing than watching it actually happen. And you can bet your sweet caboose that
Cyberpunk. Ugh. This is the most chief offender for all of that bullshit he just said. The most chief offender.
advertising companies take full advantage of this. Anticipation psychology is a massive part of promoting a new product because while companies could just shadow drop a great game and give it to us the day it's announced, knowing everything we just discussed, they could also strategically drop little teasers, directs, state of plays, gameplay, demos, little morsels of information to stoke the flames of your Twitter timeline. The hype train is more than just a human phenomena, it's something companies intentionally pour coal into because they have evidence that it will also drive sales.
Yeah.
In one 2004 study, researchers gave a group of participants a sip of unlabeled Coca-Cola during an fMRI scan. Another group was informed beforehand what the drink actually was. And what the researchers found was that when participants knew ahead of time what they would be drinking, it had a dramatic influence on their enjoyment and on the measured brain responses. In other words, the anticipation of Coca-Cola made it taste better. Another 2014 study found that approach motivation, or the expectation of a reward, typically means a stronger memory of that reward. If you are eagerly awaiting something, you're more likely to better remember the payoff, which keeps you thinking about that product well after you've received it, potentially cultivating more trust in the company that you bought the product from, and potentially converting to more future sales. In a nutshell, the lead up to buying something is half the fun of buying it. And this is a marketing tactic that you are likely all too familiar with nowadays. How many times have you seen a tweet like this, or a teaser trailer that gives you shockingly little information? Why just give us exactly what we need to know when instead they can set our imagination ablaze by giving us just enough to pique our curiosity? So it should come as no surprise that for myself and for many of you, the lead up to Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has been an almost 4-year blue-balling song and dance that has had us chomping at the bit to explore Hyrule once again.
And I think they did a great job with that, Tears of the Kingdom.
And now we are finally on the precipice of beginning journeys that just might be.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen like people making their little contraptions or like little jerk off dudes, statues or whatever on my fucking Twitter feed just randomly pop up. That shit's funny, man.
Remembered for years to come. Will dungeons and bosses feel aesthetically unique like they used to? How are they going to address weapon durability? They've got this new crafting mechanic, which means you can repair your weapons with other weapons, effectively making stuff that's about to break materials instead of just something to throw for a little extra damage. How many spears, pitchforks, and brooms can you combine? Can I make a 39.5-foot pole and stab dudes from the safety of the forest? What do these hieroglyphs mean? What the hell happened to Link's arm? What's the voice acting going to be like? What's going to happen when... But what if it's bad? What if it's good, but probably needed more time? What if little slivers of your enjoyment of the game are pinched and pulled away in a steady stream of dropped frames? What if it's fun, but doesn't have the same impact as Breath of the Wild? What if it tries to do too much and fails to do anything well? What if it only reminds me of how much I'd like to play something more akin to the old linear Zeldas?
Dang.
What if this 4-year endeavor leaves me disappointed? This is what I meant when I said earlier that I have been simultaneously in drive and reverse thinking about this game. I want to fully dive into the mosh pit of lofty expectations, but if the last few months or hell, my entire life as a fan of digital entertainment has taught me anything, is that if you get your hopes up too much, you're bound to get burned.
Yeah, too much hype is a bad thing for the player, from the player perspective, but there can never be too much hype from the business side, the developer perspective. They always want more hype. And you as a gamer, you cannot give it to them, all right? You need to hold. All right? Hold. Cautious optimism.
It's better to be pessimistic or cautiously optimistic.
There it is. What'd I tell you?
Than just optimistic. I did a poll on the channel not too long ago. I asked you all about games that you were excited about and if you were generally optimistic or pessimistic about how good that game will actually be upon release. And unsurprisingly, the vast majority of you voted pessimistic.
Dang, I wasn't there for this fucking vote or whatever, but that's understandable, you know? Because if he's talking like all of video games, at least in like the United States or whatever, like the Western world, then yeah, I would fucking vote fucking pessimistic for that shit, man. Because this is not based off of like what I want. This is simply based off of precedence, based off history, like within the last 5 years, the last 10 years, you know, the last 3 years, however many years, you know. This is just what his, you know, granted, you tend to remember the negatives more than you do the positives. All right, I'll give you that. But I would say the minority, there's been more of a minority of good games than there have been a majority of bad games.
I saw lots of comments mentioning that it's better to be pessimistic to keep yourself from being too disappointed. If you don't expect a ton, you can't be let down. You're either right or pleasantly surprised. And nowadays, with how often games are released either unfinished, uninspired, lacking personality, or just lacking that spark that maybe you expected it to have, a great many people come at new game releases with a reluctant cynicism. Yeah. And it makes sense that this would be the case. If the monkey doesn't know if there will actually be a raisin or not, why would the light bring him any hope? He's seen this before and it let him down. If he's burned by his expectations enough, then say goodbye to that dopamine.
Yeah.
We don't get the raisin with every game release, or maybe we do, but it's all moldy and filled with bugs. That was a good fucking joke. Good job, Daryl. This is the current day reality of being excited for games. You kind of can't be. This is what I was planning to write after I posted that poll. But what I completely did not expect was that the results would actually turn out like this, which surprised me for some reason. Not everyone is as cynical as me. Not everyone is.
He pulled the switcheroo.
Smashed on the ground after a disappointing game? Do people not see how hit or miss game releases have been since forever? Your optimism depends on the game and the studio and the context? You mean people actually experience hope? From my perspective, I thought that because there was such a varying degree of potential outcomes for a game's actual performance when it releases.
Okay, so his logic. Uncertainty equals lack of interest.
That this would decrease anticipation. You know, if you only give the monkey a raisin 50% of the time, the dopamine should also be cut in half, right? What? It goes up? Why are the monkeys more excited about the raisin if they don't even know if it'll be there? What the hell is happening here? I learned a lot writing this. Dr. Sapolsky notes in this.
Dang, I'm learning a lot too. All my preconceptions are just tossed to the wind.
Study that in the 50% scenario, even though the monkeys only get the raisin half of the time, there is a second, even larger wave of dopamine right before the raisin would be dispensed. The uncertainty of the scenario, he says,
I'm a fucking monkey,
is what drives the anticipation to a fever pitch. The more uncertain, the more exciting. Literally. The dopamine actually does cap out right at 50% when the raisin reward is truly a coin flip. When they dispense the raisin at 25 and 75% of the time, dopamine levels did not reach this peak. It is quite literally when the results are as uncertain as they can possibly get that the dopamine levels cap out. And if you're wondering,
So 50-50 is when dopamine caps out. That's pretty much like the game industry. It's going to be 50-50 whether or not a game is good. But I mean, I said earlier that like, I mean, I still would argue that like most games that have come out recently have been dog shit, but there is like a healthy size of like a minority of good games, you know?
wondering if this is applicable to you because you aren't a chimp eating raisins, similar work has been done in humans for monetary rewards, echoing these findings. There is a reason Vegas stays in business, and there is a reason you will always tune into the breadcrumbs game publishers drop in front of you, despite how pessimistic you may be. Like Dr. Sapolsky says, once reward contingencies are learned, dopamine is less about reward than about anticipation. And I think that's an important distinction to make here. Waiting for Tears of the Kingdom to release may fill your stomach with the kind of butterflies you used to get on Christmas Eve night as a child, but it will almost certainly not be as fun or fill you with as much joy as actually playing it will. Dopamine spikes here, but that doesn't mean the pleasure is greater here. A common misconception is that dopamine is what causes enjoyment when in reality, it actually has a great many functions. Its specific role in pleasure, though, is not to cause it, but to reinforce it. In this context, dopamine is like a hype man. It's there to tell you, hey, that looks fun, that looks tasty, you'll enjoy that. Get up and go hit the button. Get up and go pre-order that.
Do not pre-order that. I swear to God, dude, do not pre-order it. Just wait for it to come out. There is no digital scarcity of the game. You'll get one on day one. Just stop pre-ordering.
This is why the biggest spike in dopamine is when the light turns on. It's sending a spike of motivation to pursue happiness. And this little spike you see here after the raisin is consumed is the dopamine saying, yes, we simply must do that again. I'm not really sure why I gave it that accent, but here we are. Which conditions the monkey to be even more excited the next time a light comes on. So the lead up to a game, while probably not as fun as actually playing the game, is still an extremely engrossing time. It's a unique little, there's really no better way to put it, foreplay for the absolute wild ride you're about to embark on, which is why I think for myself and for many others, returning to old trailers is a way of re-experiencing one of the most
Re-experiencing that foreplay.
spellbinding parts of the experience. Now then, we do need to talk about the folks who absolutely feel pessimistic about game releases, the broken 28% like me.
Oh God, that's me. He's talking about me. Fuck.
In the event that the monkey doesn't receive a raisin, in the event that a game drops and heavily disappoints you, your dopamine has made a mistake. It has hyped up something that has not actually resulted in your happiness, and when this happens, psychologists call it a dopamine reward prediction error. When your mind jazzes you up over a potential good thing, like a movie for instance, it drives you to buy tickets, meet your friends at the theater, and in some ways gives you an expectation of the experience you're going to have. If that evening ends up meeting your expectations, your dopamine doesn't make an error, and for future movies you'll have similar expectations. But if that movie is atrocious, or all of your friends cancel on you, or some schmuck is sitting in your seat,
Bro, that actually happened to me one time. This happened like when I was like super young, like maybe 15, 16-ish. Maybe I was 14, something like that. So I lived near like a theater or whatever, and this is back at a time when I played baseball, and a lot of my friends played baseball, and we're all like hyped for this like one movie that came out. I think it was called like it was like some baseball movie with like Kevin Costner or something. I don't remember. Maybe it was like Field of Dreams or something. I don't remember. And we were all talking like earlier that day, like, okay, we're all gonna meet up at the theater at such and such time, and we're all gonna go and watch the fucking movie or whatever. So like, I get there, and I'm by myself as like a little kid or whatever. So I get there, And because I think I told my mom to like go drop me off and like I'll be fine or whatever. So I get there, buy the ticket, go up in the theater, sit down, and I'm just like, the theater was like half empty or whatever, and it's like I'm sitting up there and I'm waiting for like my friends to come in, and I'm just sitting up there by myself, and it's like, okay, the trailers are starting to come on. All right, the trailers are over. Looking down at the hallways. Oh my god, when are they gonna get here? They're gonna be late. Oh. And then the movie starts. I'm still looking. I'm like, uh-oh. Am I in the right theater? Did I go see the right movie or whatever? And the movie just kept on playing. I just kept on watching, and I was just like, oh, okay. And then I watched the movie, and it wasn't like terrible, but it wasn't really like what I expected for like a young kid or whatever. But like, it is what it is. And like after I got out, I was like, dang, nobody came to the fucking movie theater after we all got done talking about going to the movie theater. And I was like, I don't know. I wasn't really sad. Like I didn't cry or anything, but I was just like distraught. Because I don't think I was disappointed. But I was just, I don't know, it was a weird emotion or whatever. But yeah, that happened years ago.
This causes a prediction error and your baseline dopamine levels drop, leaving you frustrated but also less excited to do this again. Your neural hype men don't hype movies up for you quite as much next time around, which is why, if you've been let down by game releases enough in the past, you likely don't get that much of a dopamine hit from new information on future titles.
Yeah.
And this shouldn't come as much of a surprise. I think it's why there are so many of us that approach things with a cautious optimism or even a thin layer of pessimism. But this of course all depends, as many of you so eloquently put, on the game, the studio, what they've done in the past.
Yeah.
FromSoft has a very different track record than, say, Ubisoft. Nintendo treats Zelda much more tenderly than its other series. You expect much different from Square's JRPGs than you do their Marvel games. But with enough bad experiences, both from times you've had yourself or from times you've seen others across the web have, it's only natural that there is a bit of pessimism there. Which leads me to this.
What?
What you're looking at is a computational model of momentary subjective well-being, but I like to call it the happiness equation. You see, in this 2014 study, researchers did quite a few things, including develop this model to calculate momentary happiness. They gave over 18,000 participants a smartphone game that would present questions like this: gain or lose a certain number of points, or spin the dial to potentially gain or lose more, with the goal of
What?
collecting as many points as possible.
Roll. Also, there's like a line. So round one, you can either roll or take. Roll 50-50 plus or minus 10, or take plus 6. Bro, I'm taking the fucking plus 6. Oh, wait, but shit. Then round two, you can either roll for a 50-50 at a minus 8 or a plus 3, or just take a minus 2. So if I just do take, I'm going to be plus 4. If I roll, I could be at minus 10, then minus 8, minus 10, then negative 7. It could be positive 10, then minus 8. This is going to be at 2, which, you know, this is a 4, and this is just a positive 2. Or I could be at plus 10 and plus 3 for 13. Dang. That's a good little thing.
And what subconsciously happens when you play this is every time you are presented with a round of the game, you mentally construct an expected outcome, how you are anticipating your score will change. The same thing that happens when you open a pack of trading cards or roll for a unit in a gacha game.
Oh, it's just gambling then.
In between every few rounds, the app prompts you to answer, how happy are you at this moment? What the researchers found was that momentary happiness is a state that reflects not how well things are going, but instead whether things are going better than expected. It wasn't total scores that were correlated with happiness, but if expectations were being met, meaning lower expectations almost always led to a happier emotional state.
Expect less. That way you're surprised when shit goes good for once. What?
But this is the issue. This is why my emotional transmission is completely shot, because like so many of you, I want to buy into all the excitement leading up to a game. We want to throw a parade, rewatch trailers, theorize in the shower, annoy the hell out of our friends talking about it because anticipation is scientifically endorsed to be delectable. I want to look back on trailers fondly and remember that magical road to glory. But tragically, the more we indulge in that, the more we expect out of that game, the less likely we will actually enjoy it. When you set a bar that high, whether you mean to or not, you are playing a very risky game that many others have lost before. Dopamine reward prediction errors are very real, but fittingly, they also happen in reverse. If your dopamine doesn't really motivate you to believe the game will be good and then it's tremendous, that's a positive error. Your dopamine has undershot reality and will ironically be pushing you to get a little more excited about the next big release because it now has a reason to set a higher expectation.
Yeah.
Maybe you weren't expecting this movie outing to be so much fun. Maybe there were 3 raisins in a row and that gives the monkey hope. And this is how the cycle we talked about at the beginning never really ends. No matter how many times you're disappointed, something will always make you believe again. No matter how many times a game blows you away, something will inevitably lay an egg in the future. Anticipation peaks at a coin flip, remember? You don't ever really know how these days leading up to that new title will end, and that is half the fun of following along with the rest of the world. There is a camaraderie to it. The electricity in the air is palpable. You will always be able to look back and say, I remember what it was like right before Tears of the Kingdom dropped. It was a fucking party. You'll remember the directs.
Where were you when Tears of the Kingdom dropped?
The streams, the Discord calls with your friends until 3 a.m. as you and a fraction of the planet sat and waited with bated breath for a silly little video game to come out and be damn happy you did. So go all in, add more coal to the furnace, get excited, clown for Silksong at every indie direct, theorize, over-dramatize, romanticize, just enjoy this. This storm right before the calm. Because you can always replay Zelda, but you only get one chance to wait for it. Hello there. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.
Dang, that was a good ass video, dude. Dang. I like this. Bro, I love Daryl Talks games. Like, a lot of his videos are just like informational, you know. He speaks as like a matter of fact type deal, and it's hard to like comment on that when he comes out with like, oh, you know, like earlier in the video he's talking about, oh, this is the dopamine curve, and then you turn the page, nope, this is the really dopamine curve. Or, you know, okay, everybody was like mostly pessimistic, nope, it's a joke, it was actually mostly everybody was optimistic. That's just really cool to like learn about yourself like that. Definitely, man. But yeah, you know, I thought this was a great video. Yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. Keep it up. I want to see more, man. Definitely. All right. Later.